In today's show, we're going to talk about flow string manipulation. So we're going to look at things like replace and contains and concat and length and substring and just a bunch of little expressions that will make your life easier, whether you're trying to break up a string or create a new string, just those data manipulation things that will make you better at your projects. But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with Power Apps 911. Those guys. And today, we're going to do some string manipulation with Flow, Power Automate, whatever you want to call it. And so just some of the things that came up last week on some of my projects. So the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to take a display name and we're going to break that into first name and last name, right? That comes up a lot where the data is stored one way and you're like, man, I really wish it was this other way. And sometimes you go back and you go change the way you're storing data because you're not comfortable with manipulating it. So we're going to talk about over in Flow how to break it apart. The other thing we're going to do, Mark wanted me to be able to take a display name and get his email address. Well, it turns out that he uses a pattern of first initial, last name, and then, at company name. And so we're going to show you how to do that. And the other nice thing about what we're going to cover here is we're going to use Compose, because Compose makes it really easy for us to understand and see this. A lot of like the same way I use labels in Power Apps. So we're going to make sure you understand just how you can quickly kind of solve and figure these out. So nothing too exciting, but I promise these are core skills you guys need. So let's switch over to my desktop and learn these new things. Okay, so over here on the desktop, look, this is proof that I practiced all this earlier, so haha, you can't complain. I'm gonna make mistakes, right? But that's the key to this, is just to work our way through it. So from the beginning of Flow here, I'm gonna say create, and we wanna do an instant flow. Anytime that I'm trying to understand new things, I'm gonna do manually trigger a flow. So we'll just call this video flow, I don't know. Let's call it video flow 2. I probably already want to call it video flow. And so the reason we like to use manual trigger is it just gives us that ability to, press a button and have this happen. So I don't have to go over to SharePoint and fake some data. I don't have to get an email. I don't have to go query data. It makes my testing cycles really fast because a lot of times you're doing this when you're frustrated. And so being able to do it fast as possible cuts down on your frustration, right? We don't need more drama. There's enough drama. There's an election here in the US coming tomorrow. Oh, whatever. Okay. So manually trigger a flow. And so now we're going to say new step. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure you guys know to use Compose, right? I don't ever use variable, not never. I rarely use variables. I typically only use Compose, and I think of them as labels. I can put whatever I want here. I can hard code some text. I can put an expression here. I can do whatever I want, but this is just an easy way for me to get at the data. So to that end, we're going to start with Compose, and we're just going to start by just putting in a string. And the reason I'm doing this, we'll talk about later, but the nice thing here is it's just going to give us an easy way to change our test data without a lot of work, right? So Compose, Chewy Young. And then we're going to go ahead and rename this, and we're just going to call this, we'll call this display name, right? We didn't have to, but it makes it easier, and you don't want to rename it after the fact. So if you're going to rename things, do it now. Okay, so the first part of breaking this up so we can get Chewy and Young into two separate pieces is we're going to need to find the space. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Compose. I'm going to do Compose right here. We're going to click our mouse. And then over here on the right, we're going to hit expression. And so then under string functions, if you say see more, one of the things that is in here is indexOf. So we think of that as find a lot, but indexOf is the number of a specific character. So let's do indexOf. And so then right here in between our parentheses, what we're going to do is we just click on the dynamic content tab and click on outputs, and it is the output display name. So it makes it easy for us to read. Okay, so that's the first parameter. What string do you want me to look through? We're going to do a comma, and then, go away. We're going to kind of click around until that all goes away. Go away. Oh, Flow. All right, let's try zooming out a little bit. Can that now let us get out of there? Oh, let's go back up here. Let's go back down here. Let's try this again. Expression, and then we're going to do indexOf. Open our parentheses. There we go. Now we can click away and then back in there, and now there's terrible help goes away. Flow people, if you're watching this, I don't know what to say. All right, so let's put our output back in there. Perfect. And so now what we can do is we're going to do a comma. We're going to click out of there so that garbage goes away. And so here we want to be like, hey, what do I want to look for? And so in our case, we want to look for a piece of the string. So I'm going to do a single quote, and then I am going to just hit the space bar. So I want to find where is the space in this thing, right? So we'll say OK. And then now that we've got that written, I'm going to say save. And so I'm only going to show you the testing part once. I'm going to cut it out for all the other videos, right? So you save and then you test, or not the other videos, the rest of the times I do it, the 400 times. So we're going to say I perform and we'll say test, and then we're going to run the flow. So then this is going to process the data, right? It ran successfully and super fast, which is one of our goals. And so you can see that the space is at character 5. Now, if you look at Chewy's name, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I would have said the space was at character 6. So why is it disagreed? The reason it disagrees is that it starts at 0. So the C is 0, the Y is 5, the space, or sorry, the C is 0, the Y is 4, the space here is 5. So that's one of the first things you have to realize when you start messing with these strings, is that they like to start at 0 for most of this stuff. So when you're doing it, you're going to have to think about it. But in a minute, when we use length, length actually starts at 1, right? Because you can't have a 0 length. Well, I guess you could, but you know, the letter A is length of 1, not a length of 0. So it gets a little crazy. Just trust it. But that's why we use these compose steps, so we can see the data instead of guessing. Okay, so if we know that the space is at 5, we know everything in front of the space is the first name, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to say edit. We're going to add a new step. We're going to type in compose again. And so now what do I want to do? I want to get the first name, right? So what we're going to do, there is not a left or a right function like a lot of languages like Power Apps. What we're going to do is we're going to say expression, and then over here we're going to type in substring. And so substring, and so over here it's like, all right, what do you want the substring of? Well, I'm going to kind of click out of there, so I can click back in there. And I'm going to say I want the substring of the display name, right? That's why it's nice that I labeled it. And what character do we want to start at? Well, we want to start at the beginning, right? We want to start with the C of Chewy. So we're going to say 0. And then how far do we want to go? Well, we know that we want to get how many, and it's the length. How many characters do I want to get? I want to get 5 characters. Now, in our case, we know that this previous step returned the 5 characters. So I'm going to put a 5 here for the moment. And this is a lot of what I have to do to like make this work in my brain, right? So that's what I want. Cool. Now, how do I dynamically get the 5? Well, I'm going to go back up here. We could just take the output of this, but we're trying to build into one big function. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come back up here and grab this out. So Control C. We're going to go down here. And now that I know this 5 is right, but I just need to get that dynamically generated, we're going to delete that 5 out and paste in this formula. When we don't have to look, I just close our eyes, update, do a test, and then we're going to say perform and use the previous, right? So this is the last time I'm going to show you. But so just we're going to choose one of these previous runs and hit save and test every time. That's what I'm going to do, but I'm going to edit out. Okay? And so after 0 seconds, it's done. And if we go look, we got Chewy. Yay! We got Chewy. We got Chewy. Right? So we've done our first piece. And the beauty of this is that it's real easy to be like, well, what if it was a different length name, right? What if we did, let's see, Nicola, right? So she has 6 characters in her name. And so if we say test again, and we look down here, look at that. We got Nicola, right? Because the display name was Nicola, but the step that was calculating, right, it's dynamically finding the right number for us. So it's not going to matter. We're going to get the right first name every time. All right, halfway there for that one. Cool. So let's edit this thing again. So now we need the last name. Now we need everything after the space. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to use a very similar thing, but one of the pieces of this puzzle now is we're going to need to know about the length. Okay, so let's just do a compose real quick and talk about length. Not that it's complicated. We'll go over here, we'll type expressions, we'll type in length. Oh, you got to type in length and then hit tab. There you go, we'll click out of there. And so if we just do length of this and then length of the display name, there you go. And so now if we do a test, we'll see that the length of Nicola Young is 12, right? 6 for her first name, 5 for her last, that's 11 plus the space, 12. Perfect. So the length function is interesting because we can use it to get the length of a string. You can also use it to kind of count rows to count the number of rows in an array or number of records, right? So just keep that in mind. Length has 2 purposes, and it just knows what to do based on the type of data we fed it. So now that we understand how to do that, how are we going to get the rest of this thing? Well, let's try. So we're going to say new step. We're going to type in compose for the millionth time. There you go. And so then over here, we're going to do an expression. And so we need to do that substring thing again, right? And we know we want to get the substring of that same display name. Aren't you glad we labeled it? I'm going to click out of there so this thing quits being dumb. And so then we're going to click out of there again. And so then now it's like, all right, so what character we want to start? Well, before we started with 0 and we got the first name, but now we don't want to start with 0, right? We want to start with what character? Well, we know where the space is. We know the space in this case is a character, or is it number 6, but we don't want to start the space. We want to start at the space plus 1. So we're going to have to do an add expression right here in the middle. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to type in add. And I was going to have to watch my parentheses. So make sure we're staying here. So what do I want to add? Well, I want to add the index of our friend, right? So that's going to be the index of the space. And so for right now, we're just going to put in a 6, and then we're going to add 1 to it, right? So that would produce 7. And we're going to say, okay, so we can save it. So I can go back up here and be like, all right, where is the formula where I calculated this, right? So this is where we found the space. So we're going to copy this again. Control C. We're going to go back down here. And then now what? We're going to just go find the 6. And we're going to replace that. We're just going to paste in that stuff. We don't have to see it. Just keep your eyes closed. But we know that that is going to get us... so what is it going to be? It's the index of the space plus 1. So it's going to start at character 7. So if we look back at our formula here, right? So take the display name, so Nicola space Young. Jump 7 characters out. That'll get us this first Y. And so then how many characters do we want to go here at the end? So we're going to do a comma. It's like, what is the length? How far do you want to go? And so what we need to do here, well, first let's just try it without it. What the heck? Let's just say update. Let's do a test. All right, our flow ran. And what do we got here? Young, right? We didn't have to do anything. So it was smart enough. Oh, imagine that. I just said Flow was smart enough to do something. Flow figured out that we said, hey, start at the Y, right? Start at the Y for her, that character. So it was number 7. And then just go until the string is over. And so it just got the rest. That's pretty cool. Now, what we could have done, and what I've done in the past, I don't know if this is new or if I just didn't realize it until now, but what I used to do was I used to say, all right, I need to get the length minus the index of the space plus 1, right? Oh, but look at that. It was optional. Now, another trick, if you're like, man, I can't read this formula. That's fair. One of the things I like to do, Control A, Control C, is I will go right here and I will say, hey, I want to add a comment, and then I will just paste the formula here. Okay, you can't run that formula, but that way I can read it without having to paste it somewhere else. I can see the whole thing. If it gets to be 12 lines, it all just shows up as one big giant comment. And the more comfortable you get with it, the easier that is to read. But look at that, right? We now have Nicola Young. We've separated it into spaces. Now you might be thinking, well, what if it had been Nicola Von Young with an extra space in the middle? No big deal, right? Because we know that the first space represents the first name. Everything after that would be captured. And it's easy to test, right? So Nicola she's a Von Trapp or a Von Young. So let's just test it. I don't know. This is why we make it so easy for ourselves to test. Nicola Von Young, right? There's that. We've got our data. Yeah. Okay. We are doing awesome. Let's go back up here. Let's just re-edit this thing. Let's just set it back to good old Chewy Young. And so now what I want to do is I'm going to go down here. And so let's do it Mark 1, right? Mark 1 to create a string of the emails. The good news is we already know how to do everything. We just don't overthink it. Let's just do this easy. So we go to compose. And so what is the first one? Well, it is going to be, we can write this formula. We could copy it, but we're just going to write it, right? What are we going to say? We're going to say substring. We're going to click out of there. We're going to put our mouse right here. Right, substring of this. Where do you want to start? You want to start at character 0, right? At the very beginning. How many characters do you want? 1. You just want the first initial. There you go. That formula is easy. So that gets us the C from Chewy. Now we want the last name. Well, the last name is right here, right? What are we going to do? I'm just going to click in here. Control A, Control C, go down here. And so then now, if you're careful, if you click expression again, right, not editing this expression, I'm in a new spot, but you can paste that in. you can actually just slap these two things side by side. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people go to the concat formula. Concat works, but in a compose, I can just do this. And then I can just be like at powerapps911.com. We'll say test, and there we go. And C Young at powerapps911.com. Yeah. Now, in our case, that is actually not Chewy's email address. Chewy is just Chewy at powerapps911. But Mark's pattern, that was his pattern for email addresses. And he didn't have to worry about any oddities, right? He has a company of, I don't know, 100 people or something. But, you know, if you had other things, other ideas, other things you might have to go look at, maybe yours is more complicated. But I don't care about you learning how to make these email addresses. What I cared about is you figuring out that, hey, compose, we get to stick these together. Now, if you wanted to put all these into one big formula, you could have, right? Let's just do a new step. And so Rory this morning was asking about good old concat. And so we could come over here. And so expression concat. And so in Flow, this lets you just combine strings, right? So I could just be like, hey, you know, let's see, we'll do Chewy. And then we'll just add another string, right? Was. And then we'll do another string. And so then here. And so if we say okay and test that one. All right. And if we expand it out, Chewy, oh, I did two spaces. But you see, I could just combine strings like that. So there is nothing stopping me in a concat, right? And we've done this in some other videos before. But if you really want this thing just to all been one nice clean, and maybe you weren't using it inside of a compose, which is very likely, no big deal, right? What would you do? You bet concat. And so then right here, I'm going to use my good old Windows V. And so what do we want? We want the, we don't have one for the C, right? But so it would be, well, we'll just do this. We'll just put in some numbers right there. We'll say, okay. We'll go back over here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy this, Control A, Control C. I'm going to copy this. Oh, make sure we're in there. Control A, Control C, and then we'll copy this for good measure. Control C. Perfect. Back to this. What are we going to do? Windows V. We're going to find our first one right there. I'm going to choose it. Boop. And then we're going to do a comma. Right, we'll probably pull this over so you can see. And then we're going to do Windows V again. I'm going to do this one. Perfect. And then we're going to do another comma. And then we're going to do Windows V one last time for this. And the nice thing here is because I copied and pasted, I know those all work. I'm pretty sure that I got it right, other than I didn't. Oh, what did I forget? I see what I forgot. Remember, this one was just a plain string. So if it's a plain string, I got to put a single quote around it. Oh, not like that. Like that. Nope. Nope. Like that. Typos. I told you I'd make typos. We'll say update, and we'll do a test. And if I did it all right, compose 6. Yay! We got C Young. Woo, 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 woo. All right. So, and that's just important because this compose is working great because we're testing, we're learning our formulas. But like if I was trying to do this and insert this back into SQL, CDS, SharePoint, somewhere like that, it'd be a lot tighter just to have it all written in one lovely little concat formula. And then remember, you can definitely still Control A, Control C, and then say add a comment. And then look, there it is sitting so you can see what you wrote. So, okay, so we've kind of done those two pieces. Now, looking at Chewy's email address, I didn't really love the way it looked. I also thought about, well, what if we wanted to make sure that, this thing contained something? Right, that was another big one. So one of the things we can do here, we'll go down here. We'll say compose for the millionth times. I can't spell compose, apparently. There we go. So if we go back here, so one of the things you might do is just go click on expressions and string. And so there are different ways of doing things. But so if you look through the string functions, though, there is not a what we're looking for. So actually in the collection functions, there is contains. And so contains, it talks all about, hey, I am here for checking arrays, but contains also works with strings. So I can be like, hey, contains. Will you go look and see if the display name contains, and then we want to type it in quotes, Chewy. And so we're going to say, okay, we're going to do a test. And this should just return a true or false for us. And so if we scroll down here a little bit, right, we can see that that's a true. Now, this immediately, though, after playing with contains, I'm like, all right, well, cool, that worked. But is it case sensitive? It is. So if I go up here and if I say I typed in, I wasn't paying attention, I typed in Chewy like this and said contains. Let's test that real quick. So we scroll down here and, oh, that is a false. Womp womp. So how are we going to do contains if we don't care about case? Well, what you're going to do is there is a toLower and a toUpper function. So what I would probably do is just go right here and wrap this output, right? We know that this has the name, so it could be like toLower, and then we just wrap it in parentheses like that. And then I just want to make sure that over here this is written in C or in that form. So we say update now and do a test. And so if we expand it out, look at that. So it's a true. So keep that in mind, right? That's a way to kind of go in. And if you want to make sure that the string has something specific in it, then you have the ability to use contains to find that. The last little thing on the string front I wanted to talk about was replace. And so let's say that, in our data set, our dear dog, Chewy, as we might know him, has his name, right? It's Chewy Young. And Chewy got married, right? Him and Adeline, right? Adeline Boswell, who you've seen in some other videos. They met, they fell in love, and Chewy's very progressive, so he took Adeline's name. So he wants to be Chewy Boswell. So I could go change all the data, I probably should, but in this flow, right, I'm on the fly. I just got to change this right now to get this report out, right? How am I going to change it? Well, I could just type it up here. That'd be cheating. But what we're going to do is we're going to go down here. And so in flow, there is an expression called replace. And so replace works exactly as you probably think it does. We're going to say replace. What do we want to replace? Well, we want to click out of there so we can get away from it. I want to go into the display name and I want to replace that with old text. So what is the old text? The old text is going to be young. So we're going to replace young and we're going to change it to be Boswell. Just like that. And so I think let's give that a test. All right, let's look at Compose 8. Chewy Boswell, yay, Chewy. Chewy got married, good job. Probably wants a bone. So replace is super simple to use. And, now that we've kind of got our heads wrapped around all this, right, we know that if we wanted to replace, we could have done the lower or the upper to do like the string manipulation if we were worried about case sensitivity, that type of stuff, right? We've learned a lot of little pieces. And what's really great is you might be thinking, well, Shane, we've done all this, but now I want to use this for real, right? So use it for real. But remember, right, we made this super easy. So if you don't want to think and understand how to redo all this, just come up here and change what goes in this display name. So you could go get some data out of SQL, SharePoint, CDS, from your calendar, take an input. It doesn't matter, right? Watch. We go up here to manually trigger flow. Say add an input, text. Input, whatever, we don't care about any of that. And then we'll go right here and it's going to be, hey, compose. Your first thing is whatever they give you as input. So then now if we say save, and then we do a test now we're going to say I want to perform the trigger action, right? Because we got to provide it the data. We'll say test. Let's give it our buddy Daniel LeMay. Right? Run the flow. Done. Flow ran successfully. If we go look at, I think, step 5, D. LeMay at Power Apps 911. Very good. Oh, there's his last name. There's his first name. Right? If we go down here, he does not contain young, right? And it's just his name's still just Daniel LeMay. So that's the beauty of composes as well, is if you built everything just to flow out of this one field, I can pass it an input this way. I can go get data from Excel, wherever you want. And then you don't even have to think about this. I wouldn't do this for real, but in the early days, I appreciate you just want it to work. You don't care if it's perfect. So be willing to do this, right? Anytime you're going to write patterns like this and you're going to build it over on the side, build it in a modular way like this where you can just plug and play into one field and the whole rest of it flows down. I do this for customers all the time. All right. So hopefully that gives you guys a good understanding of all of this. If you have any questions, comments, leave them below, right? I'm always answering them. I'm usually a few days to a week behind, but I try to respond to all the comments. If you want to download this flow, remember you can go to training.powerapps911.com, go to the curated library. If you sign up there, you get email notifications from me when these come out with a little bit of context. You get downloads, you get early access, you get lots of really cool stuff. So, and yeah, other than that, I'm just going to say thanks and have a great day. Before you go, be sure to click on the subscribe button over here so that way you'll be notified when new videos come out. If you need any help or you want to work together, whether your problem's big or small, check us out at Power Apps 911. We do it all. It rhymed. Or if you're looking for more formal training offerings, we have those linked up here somewhere. So check them out. Thanks and have a great day.